Hello aspirants, welcome to KGS IAS English YouTube channel. As you all are aware of this thing that we had started the economics survey series, and today we will discuss the second chapter of economics survey. Before that we had discussed the chapter number 1 of economics survey. If in case you had missed that, do watch that particular video, because in that video I explained how the economic projections were made. So let's start with chapter number 2, fiscal development anchoring stability through credible consolidation. Now this chapter talk about the revenue and expenditure component of government, whether it is central government or state government. What are their revenue component, what are their capital components, what are their deficits, and how both center and state are focusing on overall long-term growth. So this chapter generally talk about the fiscal segments, which focuses more on stability as well as through credible consolidation. It's very important chapter, because the reason is most of the concept that is mentioned in the economic survey may be asked by UPSC in static economy as well. Even if you see in 2025 attempt, 2-3 questions directly came from this particular segment of fiscal development. So it's extremely important. Let's discuss this particular thing. So first of all, what is the core fiscal strategy of the center? What is the core fiscal strategy of the center? It focuses on overall the world level countries are facing the high public debt, limited fiscal space, pressure on government budgets as well because of the tariff that is imposed by US government, then global uncertainty, war like situations prevailing in different parts of the world. Apart from that, most of the investors are pulling out their money and investing in the safe in assets. So the whole world economy is facing this high public debt level, the limited fiscal space, and the government is also having a lot of pressure on their budgets. But if we talk about India, India follow a unique fiscal strategy which combine fiscal consolidation. What is the meaning of fiscal consolidation? Whenever the government feels that there is excessive spending going on and the deficit keep on increasing, they follow this fiscal consolidation approach. In this fiscal consolidation approach, they try to reduce their deficits and debt. Second is sustained public investment. Now, earlier what used to happen, the government is doing public investment, but in that public investment, the majority of the component is of revenue expenditure. The budget component has two main components. One is revenue, another is capital. Capital budget is basically a long-term asset creating, whereas a revenue budget is a recurring kind of an expense that is not creating an asset. It is just a regular form of expenditure. So here the government is focusing on sustained public investment. That means that form of public investment which actually create more assets in long term. So that's why capital expenditure is more focused. And then maintaining strong growth. Strong GDP growth is essential for the economy, because as you all know, we have this target in our mind that first we want to achieve the $5 trillion economy status, and then by 2047 we also want to become a developed nation. So for this, strong growth and the momentous sustained growth, inclusive growth is quite essential. Now, if we talk about the role of fiscal policy in macroeconomic stability, fiscal policy play an important role first of all in economic stability, then support growth and also build investors confidence. Because if a particular country is following a policy which is more stable, the foreign investor also feel that their money is secure and they will fetch high return from that country. So that's why maintaining economic stability, supporting growth and building investor confidence is needed. So India followed a balanced fiscal strategy which include clearly defined medium term targets. Now this is very important again, that the target should not be long term targets should always be supported by a medium short term targets as well. ऐसा कहते हैं ना कि जो बहुत लंबे टारगेट्स बनाने के लिए हमें छोटे छोटे पड़ाव को पहले पार करना होता है. So again this focuses on clearly defined medium term target, flexibility in short term. Flexibility in short term means according to the situation, according to the merit, government react on a scenario basis. Now suppose if you are planning a long term project and long term projections you are making for next 20 years, 30 years, and during that projections you are not aware that what all are the small hiccups the government may face or the country may face, example COVID. So in that case there must be a flexibility in short term as well, and the more focus should be on capital expenditure, that is asset creating expenditure is again the thing that is kept in mind. Now, medium term focus strategies focus on rigid yearly target. India adopt a glide path approach. Now, this is very important. What is glide path approach? That government knew this fact that if we make these fiscal deficit target or revenue deficit target too much, if we are putting too much burden on ourselves, that this is the target that we need to keep, this is for the 10 years, this is for 15 years, it actually create a lot of burden in the mind of the government as well, and as a result of that, they may restrict their expenditure. So the glide path means that the reduction should be gradual, that should be practicable, that should be feasible. So the first thing is that gradual reduction in deficit. Second is no sudden cut that harm growth. Now, if suppose just for a short-term benefit, they are saying that we will reduce the fiscal deficit to this much, we will reduce the revenue deficit to this much, we will reduce the capital expenditure this much, then in that case, might be in short term, the things look brighter. But for long-term prospect, it is very essential that the sudden cut in any of these will not lead to overall growth projections. So that's why the government is focusing on this glide path approach. Now, in prelims, might be a question can be asked, what is the meaning of glide path approach? So glide path approach means gradual reduction in deficit and no sudden cut that harm the growth. Now, what is the core fiscal strategy of the center? What is the core fiscal strategy? The first is calibrated fiscal consolidation. That means fiscal consolidation we should done on a gradual basis. Now see, in financial year 2021, that's during the COVID time, the fiscal deficit is around 9.2% of GDP. And in financial year 2025, as per the thing, it is 4.8%. So there is a complete complete reduction in fiscal deficit, and for the financial year 2026 it is budgeted at 4.4%. Now if you see, it is 4.8 in financial year 2025. Now in financial year 2026 it is made at 4.4%. that means the target is set to reduce it, but it shouldn't be like that we should reduce it to 2.4% or 1.4%. So government focusing right now on the practical aspects, practical targets that are feasible and that should not impact the long term growth targets. Now, revenue deficit, that is, first of all, I'll tell you what is the meaning of fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit means total expenditure minus total receipt, excluding the borrowing receipts. Now, what is that total expenditure? Total expenditure means revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure. That is recurring expenditure plus long-term asset creating expenditure. And what are the total receipt? Revenue receipt, that is short-term income plus capital receipt. That capital receipt should include non-debt creating capital receipt. That means debt creating capital receipt are not included in that. So if total expenditure is more than total receipt, we have fiscal deficit. And what is revenue deficit? That is revenue expenditure minus revenue receipt. So revenue deficit, that is daily running cost, is expected to hit its lowest level since financial year 2009 at 0.8%. Now the revenue deficit target is at 0.8%. That means more money is free now for capital expenditure. That means simply the government has more money left in their boxes for capital expenditure. Again, primary deficit. What is primary deficit? That means fiscal deficit minus interest payment. That is, as you all are aware of this fact, that most of the expenditure of the government is gone for the interest payment. So the reason why fiscal deficit keep on increasing is this is the major factor of interest payment, which keep on mounting our fiscal deficit. So government said that the primary deficit is again very important, which shows that except interest payment where our deficits are moving. So primary deficit talk about fiscal deficit minus interest payment, and this primary deficit is also declining. That simply means that the interest whatever the government is earning, they are just paying out for the past borrowing. So new further borrowings are keep on reducing. So indicate current revenue increasing met current expenditure. Borrowing is mainly for serving past debt and investment. This is again very important. So whatever the borrowing is being done, it is to serve the past debt, and the new fresh debts are keep on reducing. So this is the core fiscal strategy of the center. Might be in prelims exam, you will see one of the question from this slide only. So this slide is extremely important. Moving ahead, revenue side strengthening. As I mentioned you out, revenue budget has two component. Revenue budget has two component. First is revenue expenditure, and another is revenue receipt. Revenue expenditure and another is revenue receipt. Now this revenue receipt has further two components. One is tax revenue receipt and another is non-tax revenue receipt. Non-tax revenue receipt that we will talk on in this particular sense. So rise in revenue receipt. Pre-pandemic, the revenue receipt is around 8.5% of GDP. That means the short-term earning of the government pre-pandemic is 8.5% of GDP, and post-pandemic it is 9.1% of GDP. That means there is an increase in revenue receipt as well. This rise is done through, first is formalization. When the economy is doing more on a run on more formal structure and the share of informal economy reduces, it enhances the overall tax revenue as well. Then tax administration reform like Vivad se Vishwas, honoring the honest platform, all these things, GST reforms, this also enhances the revenue receipt. And technology enabled compliances like recently e-way bills things, or the more the compliances are if made in digital form, the more the transparency prevail. So all these things will enhances this revenue receipt. If we talk about the direct tax performance, what does the direct tax means? Direct tax means the burden which you can't shift on other. That means the burden that you need to pay it by yourself. Income tax is a kind of direct tax. So increasing share of direct tax, it is increased from 51.9% to 58.8%. That means the number of people who are now filing the income tax returns increased from 6.9 CR to 9.2 CR. This shows that people are more aware of this fact that we need to pay the tax, because if it is the only if we pay the taxes, the more the revenue the government will get and the more they will incur in expenditure, and that is essential for our long-term development. If we talk about the non-corporate tax growth, it is rise from 2.4% to 3.7% of GDP, which show higher buoyancy. That means revenue growing faster than GDP. Now, this may be asked in prelims, what is the meaning of higher buoyancy? Higher buoyancy means tax to GDP ratio is increasing. That means the more the revenue is growing faster than GDP, that is through the non-corporate tax growth. Now, there is a particular thing that is called as nudge theory in taxation. This is very important. What is the meaning of nudge theory in taxation? Nudge theory means which develop a concept of rationality, which talk about that what if we are on we are placing our foot in their shoes, what is the rational thinking in overall prospect. So in taxation also, this nudge theory is doing the wonders right now. Data analytics, behavioral insights, apart from that, gentle reminders. Government is also focusing on this thing, rather than putting a lot of what I can say, a lot of pressure on the people psychologically. We should convince them, we should make them understand that why tax payment is quite essential. So as a result of that, people also understand this fact that more the way we pay the taxes, the more the government get the revenue. And as a result of that, the tax system becoming more friendly, it has now become less complex. Apart from that, honoring the honest platform, which talk about that for appeals and for all these taxpayer charter, all these things actually make the awareness more regarding to taxes and make the system less complex. So modern governance is data plus behavioral economy plus voluntary compliances. Apart from that, the corporate profits also increase from 2.5 trillion to 7.1 trillion, which shows that corporate tax is also increasing because their profit actually enhances. Second is, let's talk about the indirect taxes, where the GST, extremely important, a destination based tax, come through 101st constitutional amendment from 2017. It also consists of GST Council under Article 279A, which is a constitutional body. Now, GST, registered GST taxpayer increased from 60 lakh to 1.5 crore because of digital GST and input tax credit incentive. Input tax credit incentive means that if you had paid any kind of duties on raw material, you will get the refund once you pay the final taxes. If the tax amount is suppose if you pay a tax on raw material and you are again paying the tax on final goods, so you can subtract the input tax liability from that. That is input tax credit. So 17.4 lakh crore collected till financial year 26 till December financial year 26. So that means the revenue mobilization through GST also enhanced. Then apart from that, growth aligned with nominal GDP. GDP is a value-based tax levied on the prices of goods and services. Hence, GST revenue naturally move with nominal GDP. And apart from that, e-way bill growth is also 21% year-on-year basis. So this e-way bill growth is also enhancing from 21%. That means whenever the goods is traveling from a place to another place, e-way bill is mandatorily to be kept. Moving ahead, now GST 2.0. This GST 2.0 again create a good sense of revenue for the government, and also it reduces a lot of pressure on the people as well. So its objective is to lower the cost of living, improve price competitiveness, support labor intensive sectors. So all those goods which are very essential, the merit goods, they are having a 5% GST. 18% is met for the standard rates, and 40% for sin goods. That means those goods which is not good for human health, as well as it also create problem for other people. So 40% is levy on them. So the key objective of GST 2.0 is to reduce tax burden on common people, improve ease of doing business, increase formalization, boost domestic demand, and support manufacturing. So if essential goods are charged with less GST, in that case the pocket the burden on the pocket of an individual people will also reduce, and it also create more revenue collection, because tax collection also depend on this fact that how many people are actually paying the taxes. So if the number of people who are paying the taxes will also increase, even if the amount is less, then also it will lead to more revenue for the government. Then economic impact of GST 2.0. First is consumption effect. Lower taxes, lower prices, high demand. Then compliance effect, simple system, more people follow the rules. Formalization effect, business shift to formal economy. Then competitive effect, lower cost, export increases. And investment effect, better business environment, investment increase. This is very important. You can make a proper flow diagram of that. What is the economic impact of GST 2.0? First is consumption effect. If the tax rates are lower, then the price is lower. That means demand will escalate. Then simple system, more people follow the rules because it is easy to use. Formal effect, the more the formal economy persists, the more the revenue collection. Then competitive effect, that is lower the cost, export enhances. And investment effect, that means better the business environment, investment overall increases. Now, let's talk about the non-tax revenue part. Non-tax revenue part include all those things that is a revenue receipt of the government apart from tax revenue. That is through dividend and profit. Suppose government is holding a share of any company and that company is giving the dividend, government receives the dividend from that. Interest receipt, government has given the loans to the states or to other countries and receive interest from that. Fees, penalty, fines. Fees, any kind of a fees that is levy for a special services, or fine or penalty, that is again non-tax revenue receipt. Or the grants, the grant that the government receive from the other sources. Now non-tax revenue is stable at 1.4% of GDP, and again the government receive a huge amount from RBI, that is 2.68 lakh crore. After the recommendation of Bimal Jalan committee, the RBI, after maintaining the contingency buffer, they need to transfer the surplus profit back to the government. So even the central public sector enterprises performance, the CPSE performance, profit increased to 174% and dividend raised from to 69%. This is about the overall the growth prospect of the non-tax revenue. Now, if we talk about the non-debt capital receipt, the non-debt capital receipt is again very important. Guys, this is a very important. Like, capital receipt also has two components. I'll explain you this just a second. Capital receipt has two components. Capital receipts has two components. First is debt creating capital receipt. Debt creating capital receipt means when the government actually borrows from somewhere. Another is non-debt creating capital receipt. What is the meaning of non-debt creating capital receipt? Non-debt creating capital receipt means suppose the government received the money by disinvestment, or the government actually for example, they disinvestment offer for sale, or through asset monetization or recovery of loan. This is what non-debt creating capital receipt. I'll explain you again. Debt creating receipt, suppose government has taken loan from someone. Okay, now they have to pay back that loan. That is debt creating capital receipt. Non-debt creating capital receipt, that means government has sell one of its asset, Or suppose recovery of loan, they had given loan to someone and recover that money back. This is the meaning of non-debt capital receipt. So it has two further component: disinvestment, that is offer for sale, strategic sale, and investment infrastructure trust, that is INVIT. Around 707,000 crore, 7700 crore raised via offer for sale. Government is also focusing on asset monetization, that is selling old asset and investing in new sector. Now, if we talk about the expenditure side, what about the expenditure side? Expenditure, again, as I mentioned, there are two type of expenditure. One is revenue expenditure, another is capital expenditure. Revenue expenditure is short-term recurring kind of expenditure like law and order expenditure, salary payment, pension payment, interest payment. This is revenue expenditure. So revenue expenditure compression fell from 13.6% to 10.9% with rationalization in subsidy. So if we talk about the revenue expenditure, it fall from 13.6% to 10.9% with subsidy rationalization like DBT, leak proofing, and better targeting. Direct benefit transfer is again a major weapon that actually help government a lot to reduce their revenue expenditure. So DBT saving is around 3.48 lakh crore. Government is also focusing on subsidy rationalization because this is very much needed. If you are continue to give the freebies, people are actually becoming a lot dependent on them. So rather than giving this freebie give away with this freebie culture, you try to promote more research, make people the self entrepreneurs that will enhance their overall income base. So subsidy rationalization 1.9% to 1.1% of GDP, but the interest payment is again a major issue, that is around 36.8% of total revenue. So that's why this primary deficit, fiscal deficit minus interest payment, although it reduces, but still the interest payment amount we also need to reduce it with time. Then the major problem is cross subsidy issue. What is this cross subsidy issue? I'll explain. Suppose in the railway sector, the freight train is generating a profit of 100 rupees, but the passenger train is in the loss of, let's say, 80 rupees or a loss of 120 rupees. So whatever the profit actually earned will all go into that cost or loss to offset that effect, because if we increase the passenger ticket cost, it will create an impact on the people as well. So cross subsidy issue: railway freight pay more and passenger fare subsidized, high logistic cost and distorted prices. That means at the end we need to increase this logistic cost so that the effect of the rise in price will not fall on end consumer. Similarly, in power sector, industry pay more so that household should pay less. This is the meaning of cross subsidy. Then if we talk about the expenditure side, let's talk about the capital expenditure. Pre-pandemic, the capital expenditure is around 1.7% of GDP. Post pandemic, it is 3%. That means the capital expenditure keep on increasing, and that's very much essential because they are asset creating long term expenditure. Even the effective capital expenditure is now 4% of GDP. What is the meaning of effective capital expenditure? That means which create the infrastructure and grant given to states फॉर द कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, यानी कि जो पैसा स्टेट्स को दिया जा रहा है वो भी स्टेट्स कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर में ही खर्च कर रहे हैं. तो इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर इज इट क्रिएट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, it generate jobs, it also boosts private investment and improve overall productivity. So capital expenditure keep on increasing. Now there is very interesting concept, that is just in time system. This is what the government is now thinking, that we need to dwell with earlier also, but even what we say जितना जल्दी समझ में आया उतना बेहतर. Just in time fund is, earlier the fund were released in very, मतलब जब पहले जो होते थे पैसे वो बहुत जल्दी एडवांस में रिलीज कर दिए जाते थे. That is the reason most of the money kept an idle money or misuse of money. Now the government focuses on just in time system. Fund will release only when needed, proper tracking of fund, and linked this fund with public financial management system to have a proper scrutiny, to have proper check where the expenditure is actually being done. Now if we talk about the state government finances, if this is all about the center government, if we talk about the state government finances, the rising transfer from center is almost double since financial year 2020. States get a lot of support from center through the divisible pool of fund. So the transfer doubled from financial year 2020. That means tax devolution plus grants actually enhances the overall revenue of the states. Now, the most important component that can be asked again in prelims is this one, is special assistance to states. That is SASCI, special assistance to state, 50-year interest-free loans, so that the state should incur that expenditure in more in capital expenditure exclusively for capex. This is a prelims line that UPSC may ask. Special assistance to state, 50-year interest free loan, exclusively given when the states incur that expenditure for capital expenditure part. Protect state investment during stress time, during especially like COVID scenario. Now states are having more of revenue deficit, and why this revenue deficit is more? Because there is unconditional cash transfer. Unconditional transfer means states are giving more of direct benefit transfer to the different groups, which actually led to crowding out of their capex. That means they have less fund for capital expenditure. If the states are keep on giving these direct benefit transfer, they have less money with them, and as a result of that, their capital expenditure falls. So if we talk about, states can borrow up to 3% of their gross state domestic product. This is again an important line, and 0.5% allowed for power sector reform. So if in general, if I'll give you a summary of the state finances, their capital expenditure is actually falling, and they're incurring more of revenue expenditure and giving the direct benefit transfers. All the center is helping a lot under this special assistance to state, where they're getting 50 years plus interest free loans, 50-year plus loans that is interest free, and it is only condition is that should be exclusively used for capital expenditure. If we talk about the state's fiscal performance, their fiscal deficit is around 2.8% of GDP, that is average, which is now increased to 3.2%, which shows that their actually expenditure more is in revenue part rather than in capital part, and which is reflected in revenue deficit also. The revenue deficit across a state increased from 0.1% to 0.7% of GDP. Sources of revenue, if we talk about, the states have their own tax revenue, which is largest, share in central taxes, grants, and non-tax revenue of the states. Capital expenditure is around 2.4% of GDP, which is still good, but we need to enhance it and reduce the revenue expenditure part more. So the states should have more fund for themselves to incur more of capital expenditure. Now, a special assistance to state for capital investment under SASCI scheme, total support is 4.5 lakh crore support is given, interest free loans for 50-year duration. The only thing is it is for capital expenditure. Now these funds, the amount that is given is basically done through two ways: untied fund and reform linked funds. Let's discuss this. This may be asked in prelims as well. What is the meaning of untied funds? Different states in India have different circumstances. Suppose Rajasthan want to incur more expenditure on water part, Kerala need to incur more expenditure on employment, Punjab need to incur more expenditure on health part. There different states have different components. Okay, this is just an example that I had given. Now, untied funds are funds given to state without a strict condition on usage. That whatever the funds given to states without a strict condition on usage. That means a state can decide where and how to use them. Central governments all have this thing in mind that different states have different needs. Local government understand their priorities better. So instead of imposing condition, there must be a flexibility in their overall spending decisions. But now second one is reform linked funds. That means this fund is given only if you are doing the following reforms. That means the center wants states to improve efficiency, implement the reforms, strengthen governance. Example, power sector reform. Central government will release the fund, but you need to improve the power sector, that you need to reduce the losses, improve billing efficiency, increase cost recovery. Urban reforms, that is property tax reform, better municipal governance, fiscal discipline, maintain deficit limit, improve the revenue. This is the kind of fund which is released when you follow the following condition or you fulfill the following condition. This is reform linked funds. If we talk about the state's expenditure structure, revenue expenditure, see how much it is. It is around 84% and capital expenditure is just 16%. So the states are doing unconditional cash transfer, that is direct cash without condition. It is around 1.7 lakh crore of funds. which actually increases their revenue expenditure, reduces fund for capital expenditure. There is no long-term growth projections, and even it impact the labor participation as well. So this is the state's overall scenario. Now, debt management, if we talk about the medium term goal of debt management for overall perspective is 50% plus minus 1% of GDP by financial year 31. That means deficits, we should reduce these deficits, but with a calibrated approach, with a practical glide path approach. So central government investment is 4% of GDP, among the highest relative to revenue globally. India prioritizes growth enhancing spending. So let's discuss few of the questions, friends. You should pause the video, answer in the comment what are the correct answer of these questions. Very interesting questions. Consider the following statement regarding India's fiscal development. A decline in revenue expenditure as a percentage of GDP necessarily indicate a reduction in overall fiscal deficit. अगर रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर कम होगा तो फिस्कल डेफिसिट कम जरूर होगा, बट इट इज मेंशनिंग दैट देयर इज नेसेसरली, दैट मींस इट्स अ सुपरलेटिव. Even if there is a decline in revenue expenditure and if you are doing more of capital expenditure, then also the fiscal deficit increasing. Although the benefits may be seen in the long term, but still, if the revenue expenditure are less and capital expenditure is more, fiscal deficit increases. So this is the wrong statement. An increase in capital expenditure has higher multiplier effect on economic growth. That's true because it is long-term asset creating. Sustained fiscal transfer to state automatically ensure high economic growth in those states irrespective of expenditure composition. Now see, sustained fiscal transfer to state automatically ensure higher economic growth in those states irrespective of expenditure composition. So if you see this particular statement, statement 3 is saying sustained fiscal transfer. That means the government is giving the funds to the state. It ensure automatic high economic growth. No, it will not ensure automatic high economic growth until and unless the amount should be prioritized for capital expenditure or for infrastructure purpose. If the center is giving the money to the states and state is just giving it on a subsidy basis or freebies basis, it will not lead to economic growth. So this is also wrong statement. So 1 is wrong, 3 is wrong, second is correct. So this is D is the right answer. Moving to the next question. Consider the following statement regarding fiscal development in India. A decline in primary deficit implies that government is increasingly borrowing to finance current expenditure rather than past debt obligation. It is reverse actually. Decline in primary deficit implies that government is actually fulfilling their past debt obligation and they are now not increasing more for the current expenditure. This is wrong statement. A decline in primary deficit implies that government is increasingly borrowing to repay their past debt, not for the current expenditure. This is incorrect statement. The share of direct tax and total tax revenue has increased. This is true. Tax buoyancy greater than 1 indicate that the tax revenue is growing faster than GDP. This is also true. 2 and 3. So A is the right answer. Question number 3. Fiscal transfer from center to state have consistently resulted in higher economic growth in low income states. Okay. The scheme for special assistance to state for capital investment provide interest free loan exclusively for revenue expenditure. No, this is for capital expenditure. Unconditional cash transfer while improving short term consumption may crowd out capital expenditure and reduce long term growth. This is true. And the first is fiscal transfer from center to state have consistently resulted in higher economic growth. No, they are again doing more of expenditure in subsidies and all that. So this is wrong. So the right answer is 3 only. Now the next question, consider the following statement regarding fiscal development in India. The decline in revenue expenditure as a percentage of GDP has enabled increase in capital expenditure. That's true. जितना ज़्यादा revenue expenditure decline होगा उतना ही percentage of GDP for capital expenditure will increase. That's true. Non-tax revenue growth in recent year has been primarily driven by disinvestment receipt and asset monetization. This is wrong. Non-tax revenue growth is basically through dividend income. This disinvestment receipt and asset monetization help actually non-debt creating capital receipt. Question is asking about non-tax revenue growth. So non-tax revenue growth increases because of increase in dividend income. So this is the wrong statement. Interest payment as a proportion of revenue receipt reflect the extent to which current revenues are pre-committed for past borrowing. True. Effective capital expenditure include both capital outlay and grant in aid for creation of capital asset. This is also true. So question is asking about incorrect. So incorrect is 2 only. 2 only is the correct statement. Now we have the match the following question. Primary deficit, that is fiscal deficit minus interest payment. Massive responsiveness of tax revenue to change in GDP. This is tax buoyancy. Tax buoyancy include capital outlay along with grant. This is effective capital expenditure. So this should be 3-1 is for B. Reflect borrowing requirement excluding interest payment. So 1 is for C. Tax buoyancy is this A. Then special assistance to state for capital investment, provide interest-free loan to state exclusively for capital expenditure. This is true. So how many pair are correctly matched? Only one is the right answer. So that's all, friends, in chapter number 2 of economic survey. I hope you all get it, what all is this necessary in this chapter 2. If you really like these videos, do mention in the comment, as well as I hope that you all get it, how we need to read the economic survey and what kind of questions may be asked in prelims. So thank you so much. God bless you all.